Hello, welcome to this week's edition of MMA News. So today going into it, this last weekend was UFC on FX, Brown versus Bigfoot. And it was a pretty decent card. Justin Edwards upset Josh Neer. He was not accepted to win that fight. As it turns out, Josh Neer fell victim to once again getting choked out before he could tap. This happened to him against Eddie Alvarez in Bellator, and it happened again. He got guillotine choked in before he could tap out. He lost consciousness. So there was that fight. And then in the flyweight eliminator for the title, John Dodson, the tough winner who originally went at bantamweight, then went down, went against Suerio Formiga, and he beat him in the second round with punches. So he's slowly building up there. Then you had the reassigned co-main event from UFC 151, Jake Ellenberger versus Jay Herman. Ellenberger actually won this fight. So Herman once again came across another hiccup in his career. He's one of those fighters who comes short a lot of times, unfortunately. Then you have then Bigfoot. Antonio Bigfoot Silva fought Travis Brown, and he beat him. So he finally got a rebound from those past two losses that he came across, and Brown suffered his first defeat. So that's how that fight card went down. It was, as I said, pretty exciting, but that's just things rolled out the way they did. So then also that same night was Bellator. Ugh. 76. Actually, no, that's 75. And in this fight, they had the first round of the heavyweight tournament. And so what ultimately happened was that Brett Rogers, let's see, well, you have a bunch of nobodies, so not known. Well, okay, I'll put it this way: have a bunch of unknowns fight and then win their fights. Vincius Quiros beat Mark Holata by armbar. Then Richard Hell beat Mike Wessel via TKO punches. Those guys are kind of known. Now, the name guys, Alexander Volkov defeated Brett Rogers by decision. And they were actually, turns out it was actually dominant because all three rounds were 30-25, which means that he whomped them. Yeah, Rogers obviously hasn't really improved his ground game. So then you had Thiago Santos beat Eric Prindle, interesting enough, by groin kick. There seems to be a lot of groin kicks going on in these fights. It's like those guys just keep bashing heads, and there's always controversy. So yeah, that's that's how that turned out. So Thiago Santos moves on. Hopefully he can make weight. Uh, 3 times in 3 times in a row. But yeah, that's how. An interesting note: there were 3 catchweight bouts on the preliminary card. Because a bunch of people either didn't make weight or that was how it was scheduled. But anyways, so that was Bellator 75. Then this next weekend we have Bellator 76. Where in addition to the first round of the featherweight tournament, you also had you also have a battle between Eddie Alvarez and Patricky Freire. And this fight is significant because these guys are both lightweight contenders. Now, if as I understand it, Alvarez's Bellator contract is actually coming due at some point. I don't know exactly when, but it's coming due, just like Hector Lombard, and of course Lombard went to the UFC. What Alvarez would do, I am not certain, but the theory is that he may. If he gets a big enough offer, he'd probably go to the UFC. If not, then he would probably stick with Bellator. It just depends on how things go, because Bellator contracts don't have the Champions Clause, which may or may not be beneficial. You had Lombard jump ship, so the middleweights, they're gonna fight out for that. But anyways. So the opening, I do not know any of the guys who these are just a bunch of unknowns. So they're just all gonna fight and see who eventually wins and gets a shot. So that's what I've got on that one. Then we have UFC 153 coming up this Friday, taking place in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. And this was one of those fight cards that kind of went, it had a bunch of issues going on. Vitor Belfort at one point was supposed to fight Alan Belcher, but then he got pulled to fight John Jones at UFC 152. Belcher ended up dropping out with an injury anyways. Phil Davis versus Wagner Prado is also going. That's on one that's on the fight card. Rampage was supposed to be in this fight, but he got an injury, so his last fight is not going to be. It's not going to be offered that fight, so they got a replacement. And, of course, as we know, Aldo was supposed to fight Frankie Edgar for the main event. It was originally supposed to be Eric Koch, but then he had a bunch of injuries, and the title fight was just pulled all together. So Anderson Silva and Stephan Bonner both stepped in on short notice, and they've agreed to go light heavyweight for only 3 rounds, which this is significant because it's the first time since UFC 138 that the main event has gone on 3 rounds, which personally is how I think it should be, because this is a non-title fight. I don't believe non-title fights should be the length of a title fight in UFC, but Obviously, it's not my decision, so. Anyways. A few names that come out. Cristiano Marcelo on the really preliminary fight card on Facebook. He comes out. He's fighting some Swedish dude named Renzo Madadi. Middleweight Lewis Kane. He was at one point a potential contender, but I'm not exactly sure what happened. Is going against Chris Kamazi. Then on the preliminary FX fight card, Sergio Moraes, Rene Forte, I do not know who these guys are. Diego Brando, that name kind of rings a bell. Going against Joey Gambino. Gleason Tiba, he's a veteran. He's going against Francisco Trinaldo. Then Ronnie Mariano Bezerra versus Sam Sicilia. I don't know who those guys are. Then on the main card, you have Damian Maia, former title contender, going against Rick Story. Light heavyweight, you have Wagner Prado going against Phil Davis. Davis was at one point was kind of being touted as possibly being a contender against John Jones, but he lost to Rashad Evans, so he's been in some fights since then. Then welterweight, you have Eric Silva against John Fitch. Fitch, of whom since his fight, he's gone through some ups and downs. He's kind of been put on the wayside because, he fought against GSP and then he lost, and then people thought of him as boring because he's got a rather dull ground and pound. Then light heavyweight, Glover Teixeira versus Fabio Malando. That was originally supposed to involve Rampage Jackson. That was supposed to be his last fight of the UFC because his contract is coming due, and Dana and Rampage just are not happy with each other right now. They just want to be rid of each other. Rampage wants to be in the free market, and Dana is kind of embarrassed to have him. And incidentally, with the way that the way it's gone up and down, it's kind of understandable. Then heavyweight, you have Big Nog going against Dave Herman. Herman was knocked out by Roy Nelson last, and Big Nog's kind of, since he's arrived at the UFC, has gone through some ups and downs as well. I think a lifetime of having fought in Pride and then going into the UFC right at it has kind of taken a toll on him because he's not the fighter that he used to be. So there's that, and then of course Anderson Silva, Stephen Bonner. So one other thing I'd like to go over is that also this weekend is the India-based Super Fight League is having their fourth event in Mumbai, India. It's going to be on YouTube, so anyone wants to watch it, they can watch it on YouTube. Initially, there was